Well, for more on this, we can speak live now to the founder of Head for Change, Dr Judith Gates, who is in Ferry Hill in Darlington, on the very streets where her husband, former Middlesbrough player Bill Gates, grew up. A very good afternoon to you, Dr Judith. I mean, you and others have campaigned for this day. Just give us your reaction to the announcement.
Right, thank you very much for allowing me to give my views. Obviously, this is an important first step. It's important because the Premier League and the PFA are recognising, acknowledging their responsibilities towards these players. However, I have to say that this is like the first minute of a football match. This is the kick-off that's indicating that the sporting governing bodies know that they have a responsibility. And the very fact that £1 million has been suggested, it sounds a lot of money, but I really have to make the point that that is 2 weeks' wages for a top Premier League player, and is actually only enough to meet the residential care costs for maybe 10 or 12 families for a year. And residential care costs are the thing that is most needed. So my views are delighted that this first step has been taken, pleased that the footballing governing bodies are recognising their responsibility, but recognising that there are 89 more minutes in this game and the possibility of extra time, and more money is certainly needed from the other sporting governing bodies in order to more fully meet the needs of the families that are suffering so much.
Yeah, and I mean, your family has had to try and fund the cost of Bill's care directly. So from what you're saying there, is it simply unaffordable for the families of other former footballers?
Bear in mind that my husband and many of the other former footballers played in the 60s and 70s, where the basic wage was minimal, where they were paid appearance money. We are a fortunate family where my husband was a very bright, very able entrepreneur and was able to have a very successful career after football. So we are not asking for any money for our family. We are able to meet Bill's care costs. However, I am working directly with families who are talking about selling their home, who are going to GoFundMe, who are worried to death about how they're going to meet the care costs that they so desperately need and that the men so desperately need. So this is a really important issue. Very recently, we organised a game at Spennymoor Town. We called it the £1 billion game, and we didn't just pluck that figure out of thin air. We costed what the expenses will be for care costs, for research, for education over the next 30 years, and we came up with a conservative figure of £1 billion, which very much reflects what the NFL is doing in America. So £1 million sounds tremendous, is tremendous in that it is an acknowledgement of responsibility, but we desperately need the other sporting governing bodies to step up, to recognise that they are in one of the world's richest games, to recognise that the amount that's been spent on transfers in the last transfer window is significant, and £1 million will only look after 12 families with residential care costs for 1 year. So more is desperately needed.
And yeah, I mean, Head for Change has done that research suggesting that the cost is so much more. So is that what you want? Do you want them to be looking towards pledging nearer the £1 billion mark rather than this £1 million mark?
I would want there to be pledges that acknowledged £1 billion was needed over 30 years. I mean, what is currently being suggested is what I recommended at a meeting at Wembley just last year, where I said an interim fund was needed, which it appears that this is, but then subsequently what is needed is an independent charity that handles the money in an objective, criteria-based way in order to move forward. And we definitely need not just support for care, although that is absolutely crucial, but we need support for research that protects the players that are currently worried to death about what their future may hold. Not just research on causation, but research on diagnosis, research on treatments, and we also need monies on education. I am just about to launch a new charity, Head Safe Football, at the request of footballing families, which is going to focus exclusively on football and what the footballing community can do to fight against CTE. We're talking about Football United versus CTE. We're talking about local trailblazers making changes in their community that protect the brain health of players from grassroots to professional level. And all of these things are needed. And overall, the cost over 30 years will be closer to £1 billion rather than the much appreciated but not sufficient £1 million that is currently on offer.
And of course, the FA and the EFL, they've been part of the discussions for years. They aren't currently involved in this new brain health fund. What's your take on that? What do you make of that?
My view is that the FA and the EFL, in fact, all of the sporting governing bodies, have a duty of care. And that duty of care is to the players of today and the players of tomorrow. As I've said, we already have a 30-year problem. We have players who have retired from the game who may have tau protein spreading like poison ivy in their brains from having headed so many footballers when they played. We have players who are currently in the game, wondering whether they reduce heading in training, wondering just what they do. And to me, it is a duty of care responsibility for the FA, for the EFL, to protect the players that bring us so much joy in the game.
We just have to say that the FA have stressed that their focus is putting investment into research and education programmes. The EFL are doing similarly while still working with all of football's authorities to be part of this fund as a future charity, which is the next goal. Judith, it's really good to speak to you about this. We have spent some time with your husband Bill in the North East. We were talking to Rob Dorset about it just a little earlier. Just finally, how is he and just how tough has his illness been for him and your family?
You've used the word tough. I would put it in capital letters with exclamation marks in between every letter. This has been a 13-year journey for me, for my husband, for my family, as it has been for so many families. And what we watch are men fading away. What we watch are former confident, fit people who have contributed to a game that they love becoming increasingly incapacitated. My husband can no longer walk. My husband can no longer speak. We communicate in a number of brief ways. I hold his hand and I say to him, "Squeeze my hand if you know I love you." And I am delighted when he squeezes my hand. But this is what families are facing. And we are fortunate that Bill is peaceful. We are fortunate he is in a care facility that looks after his every need. I know of families where the men are violent, where they're confused, where they're headbutting their wives, where they're punching holes in the wall. This is not a gentle disease. This is a brutal disease. And the sporting governing bodies need to recognise that it is preventable, and their duty of care should lead them to doing what can be prevented from a precautionary perspective.
Judith, it's been lovely to speak to you. You described something that's just unimaginable for so many people. You're an incredible woman. You're doing an incredible thing. Thank you so much for joining us here on Sky Sports News.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.